Dan is now part of the Green Future Solutions team at Exeter University, and that's part of what we'll be talking about today. So Dan, over to you. Thanks a lot for coming on and doing this for us today.
Thank you very much, Richard. I shall endeavour to share my screen in a second. I'm speaking to you from my shed, it turns out, at short notice, in Weybridge, in North Cornwall. The University of Exeter has a campus in Cornwall, as well as Exeter itself, and I'm one of the Cornish-based people. It's blowing a hoolie in my garden right this very minute, and the shed is rattling slightly, so hopefully the Wi-Fi will hold out. I'm going to
don't give us a live streamed climate related.
No, I don't think there's any particular crisis happening right now. Although a flock of starlings has just landed and started eating the berries off my palm tree, which is a sure sign of autumn.
There you go.
Right, I'll share my screen. I am hoping. Now, does that work?
Yeah, you just need to do that display settings thing and switch it to the other view. So display settings and then swap presenter view and slideshow. And oh, interestingly, it's still showing the notes view. If you're happy and there are no notes on there, I think you can flick through your slides on there fine. Or you can try that again.
Very good.
I'm seeing the same thing at the moment, but I think you can flick through your slides on there, Dan. So if you're happy to do that, then that should be fine. Oh, disappeared.
Disappeared?
Disappeared for the moment. Do you want to give it one more try?
I will try one more time.
Good stuff. I always feel like it wouldn't really be a Zoom call without some technical challenges, you know, so it's no worries.
How about that?
Can't see anything at the moment. I wonder if you need to just reshare, Dan.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
It does. Like I said, no worries. We'll get there in a sec. Here we go. Now, I think if you click on start from the beginning again. There we are. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Good stuff. No worries.
We're a Teams organization.
Oh, there you are.
So I haven't done Zoom since the heady days of lockdown. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about a range of different things to do with the University of Exeter. I've been at the University of Exeter for 12 years in different roles. And my background has been in nature and nature conservation for some decades. But I wanted to really talk about the role of a university and the changing role of a university within this conversation and what we're doing about it at Exeter. So I'm trying not to do a massive pitch here, but you can find out a great deal about what I'm going to talk to you about at Green Future Solutions. You're going to hear from Peter, as you've explained, who's in charge of the network element of Green Futures Solutions, and he'll tell you a lot more about it. But essentially, and I'm assuming I'll share these slides, or we can share these slides down the line, but essentially it's all at that website. I wanted to talk about the people element of nature conservation. At a university, we're science-led, but we're also obviously an education institution. And we find that in order to motivate and inspire the current and future generations of practitioners when it comes to nature recovery, we have to think very much in the round. My personal background, as Richard has mentioned, has been around some of the sort of health and well-being aspects of nature conservation, and I've worked very hard for some years to set up nature prescribing with NHS departments and GP surgeries in the southwest, and I think that kind of exemplifies an approach at the university where, as well as the hard science and the pure science, the ecology and the economics, we do tend to think that in order to get biodiversity and nature recovery at the heart of everyone's decision making in every business, you need to try to generate a sense of wonder, which is quite innate, I think, to the human condition, and combine the two in order to make change. So we have internally a thing called the Biodiversity and People Network, which is a network of academics, businesses, stakeholders, policymakers, and so on, aiming to do precisely that. And again, there's the website there if you would like to follow that up. Richard also mentioned TEVI. Now, in the good old days of European funding, and I'm afraid they are old days now, Cornwall benefited tremendously from structural funding from you. The projects, of which there were dozens, have just really come to an end this summer. And hopefully, it's still kind of about hope, I think, hopefully some of that work will continue and be replaced by the Shared Prosperity Fund, government's regional funding program. This hasn't really been tested yet to see if the same capacities and the same skills will flow from that funding program. But one of the projects in Cornwall that we ran was TEVI, and I ran it for 5 years. TEVI, which is Cornish for grow, is all about growing the natural environment and growing business at the same time. So we were seeking out businesses that could find a market or a service, a place in the market for their products or their services that were about addressing the ecological crisis. Of which, it must be said, we didn't find it at all hard to find willing companies. It may be a feature of Cornwall, which rests in part upon its environmental quality to attract people and to attract businesses down here, or it may just be a fact that nationwide over the last few years we've seen positively a growth in SMEs seeking to exploit and find those markets. But I must say, I'm glad that all of our learning and all of our tips and hints on how to grow business around environmental growth have been collated in a rather beautiful and freely downloadable best practice guide. So if you go to tevi.co.uk, please do download that and read at your leisure. All in all, over the last 5 years, up until July of this year, we helped over 500 companies. And of those 500, we grant aided over 250. So that's the kind of level of engagement that the university has achieved in the recent past. And I'm very much hoping that that provides us a legacy upon which we can build to engage with companies right across the piece, both in the southwest and beyond. And it was sector blind. I think it's very important to point out that we worked with service companies, consultancies, companies, brewers, manufacturers, clothing companies, tourism-related companies, you name it, farmers, marine-based organizations, and we'll come up to a couple of those examples in a minute. But obviously, if you're going to reverse the decline in nature, everyone can and everyone needs to. find a way of doing their part. And that was the kind of logic that we've worked upon, and I hope to expand upon in the future. So just to go back to that Green Future Solutions, the University of Exeter has gone through a rather major restructuring and new strategizing sort of process where we've repositioned ourselves. And I'm glad to say that in our overarching vision, first sentence of our overarching vision is that we need to form partnerships with others and build our place in the community to address the climate emergency and the ecological crisis. That's kind of the first line of our vision. To do that, we know that we need to develop real world solutions, and the only way of doing that is to do it hand in hand with business and business of all sizes. So that's the sort of premise before, that underpins our platform and I suppose our business engagement window, which is Green Future Solutions. Where we developed that, when you're a university, you come from, you don't start from scratch. We're obviously a big organization with a great deal of projects and a great deal of history. But we began to sort of pull things together across the entire institution in order to complete that virtuous circle. So this weird looking spidery diagram is an attempt to summarize how an institution like a university can work with people and with our partnerships. We wanted to be much more agile. A university is not famed for its agility. We're not a quite fully private sector, but we are, and we are thoughtful, I suppose. We are stuffed full of academics who quite often like to complicate things and ask difficult questions. It's kind of what academics do. So none of that is always particularly helpful when you're trying to work with businesses who want a solution and want to get on with it that day. So the Green Future Solutions is an attempt to become much more agile and to build those partnerships, grow those partnerships, and to help our academics respond much more rapidly. We want to build on the legacy from projects including TEVI, but also dozens more, and so on. I won't go through the whole diagram, but essentially the thinking was, how can we change the way we work in order to lead and create some meaningful action on the environmental crisis. So I'm going to go through 2 or 3 examples of what I'm talking about to add some actual real meat to these bones. So, for example, we worked and do work very closely with Southwest Water. So that's obviously a huge company, a utility company, one that is owned by an international conglomerate, effectively, a large French-owned company that owns the biggest stake in Southwest Water. So how do you engage with a company like that, which, with the best will in the world, has been suffering bad press over some of its environmental credentials? And the answer, I think, to that question is to work with them across the entire business, to work with them with the principles of honesty and speaking sort of truth to economic power, as it were, and to look at their business holistically. And in that sense, we meant to look at water holistically, the entire water cycle, not just the bit that Southwest Water deal with, the drinking water and the sewage. but to look at the way that water works through our entire environment. So both ecologically and economically. And as soon as you do that with a big company like Southwest Water, you very quickly start addressing issues around their supply chain. Southwest Water work obviously with huge numbers of contractors and businesses, but also want to work with more new and innovative companies that might be coming up with interesting ideas. So we worked with companies in the Southwest who are developing, based on the Internet of Things, new sensors for catching sewage leaks, particularly from small enclosed systems of rather than sewage mains, before they happen. So applying technology and applying new technology and wireless technology to monitor environmental issues before they become problems, before they start spilling into the system. We also worked with Southwest Water around some of their investment vehicles. Southwest Water are very keen to find ways of using their investments in biodiversity net gain with local farmers and within local catchments. And they were very interested in seeing more beavers released on their river systems. So how you go about sustainably and ethically sourcing beavers and how they should be released and how they should be kept has been something that's happened right across Devon and Cornwall over the last 7 or 8 years. And I'm glad to say that the population of beaver and their positive ecological impacts on a number of different estuary and riverine systems has increased dramatically across this region. All of that work, once it's up and running, results in I think it's 35 million, I forget the exact figure, some huge figure, investment by Southwest Water at the university called CREW, which is I think it's a Centre for Resilience in Environment, Water and Waste, an odd little acronym. But it's a new building. It's a whole new set of funding opportunities for businesses to engage with. It's a new centre of academic excellence to look at water in the round. So that's one example with a great big company. Here's an example with a much smaller company. This is Arc Marine. Arc Marine is an engineering company based in Cornwall. And they create units for artificial reefs or harbour walls, spits, breakwaters and that kind of thing, using a composite concrete material and going out and building them in situ. And they do that for their clients, with harbour authorities, for example, local authorities. But they also do it on the basis that what they're doing creates habitat for nature. They were well aware that in doing so, they needed both to monitor their claims in terms of biodiversity gain in the marine environment, everything from anemones and seaweeds through to crustaceans and fish. But they were also aware that the material that they were using was a type of concrete that wasn't especially sustainable. We all know that concrete manufacture is very carbon heavy. So they wanted to reduce that and to think in more circular terms. We put them in touch with one of the mining companies in Cornwall that we still produce quite a lot of China clay around the St Austell area, and there is waste material that comes out of the production of China clay. By using that waste material instead of just dumping that on land, and by finding the right bits of kit required to use that material and compress it and make new reef blocks, we are therefore taking carbon, reducing the amount of carbon used in the manufacture of these reefs, while simultaneously improving nature and habitat for nature. So it's quite old tech, but it's finding new uses for old tech. And I think this is sometimes the right button to press. It isn't always about hugely innovative and expensive advances in AI or machine learning. Sometimes it's about borrowing materials, literally, and fairly traditional manufacturing technology and using it in new places. One more example, and sticking with the marine, because I am based in Cornwall and we are very much a coastal sort of community down here. This is another company that the university has helped. A very small company originally, it's growing quite rapidly, the Cornish Seaweed Company. So there was a great deal of interest, I think, over the last few years in using seaweed as a food additive or as a sort of nutritional in tablet form for health and nutrition. They started as many, indeed most, the vast majority of seaweed gathering occurs by taking it right out of the sea, right off the coast. A few years ago, we would regard that, I think, as a beneficial way of expanding the economic use of our coasts, and that was great to find new food sources, especially against a decline in fishing in Cornwall. So there's a lot of support for hand gathering seaweed at low tide, literally, kelp, and it seemed very sustainable and very green in some way. Once they built up their business a little bit, it became quite clear that actually there were regulatory problems, there were efficiency problems. There were most certainly, there was nothing particularly green or positive about ripping kelp out of our coastal areas. And they wanted to move to a new model where they grew seaweed on land. On land, kelp growing systems are very energy intensive and quite water intensive. And that's what largely stops them from happening. So with a great deal of clever technology and clever investment, both from our ecologists and from our energy system engineers, we found new ways to scale up their business. I think it kind of, this example epitomizes a change in thinking. As I said, it changes that way of thinking about a business model that appears to be green, but as time goes on, appears not to be so green, and ecosystem protection becoming much more to the fore. So a long-term relationship like that between a university and a small company, it's been going on for one form or another for nearly 10 years, is about absorbing that change of thinking and changing the business model to accommodate that. So those were three sort of examples of what we're doing under the Green Future Solutions. Essentially, what you can summarize them all with that little a phrase there, tagline: we are trying to find ways to be climate positive and nature positive and business positive all at the same time. It sounds trite, I'm well aware of that. It sounds simplistic, but actually it's not. In actual fact, seeking out ways in which you can grow your bottom line whilst improving things for nature and the climate, it's enormously rewarding work, and it is also difficult. It is also something where you have to think 360 degrees around all of your environmental impacts, and to find that way of working in new ways and working towards those new sorts of goals, whilst being able to employ people and keep shareholders happy, is the sort of it's the puzzle that we're all trying to solve. And each time that we do so, and each time that we find a way of engaging with a business of any sort or any size, and unlock that puzzle, it's why I'm working. It's why I'm doing this work. It's why I'm working at the University of Exeter, because I think, in my heart of hearts, that there has to be, in order to change the way that nature is declining, there has to be, you have to work with business. In a nutshell, you have to work hand in hand with business. And by business, I mean literally everybody, sole traders, charities, as well as profit-making businesses, to find those solutions. So just, in summary of what you can find on that website within the Green Futures Solutions, there's a whole set of different services that we can provide. There are many things under these drop-down menus around biodiversity disclosure and footprinting. There's no point working on this meaningfully if you don't know what your impact is already. The assessments and the models, the nature solutions, all of these different things, we can work with businesses to help find ways of remodeling your practices, or find new products, or find new services. So I did say at the beginning that I was going to try and avoid this being a pitch. I know it's turned into a little bit of a pitch, but I'm excited that we've launched this in the last few weeks. I'm excited that my organization that I've worked with for 12 years has started taking this very seriously, and it's very much the way we're working as a university. Somebody that employs thousands and thousands of people and has tens of thousands of students every year. The impact that we can make, I hope, is going to be far-reaching and hopefully indeed global in its impact. So essentially, that's what I wanted to cover. I know I've gone on about university and Green Futures Solutions, but I also just wanted to keep emphasizing that the reason I'm doing it is because of a deep felt emotional connection with nature that goes back to childhood, really. And I think if you can tap into that, and there is that in nearly everybody, that kind of connection, that's where I start from. And so I'm always interested to hear from people about why they care about this in the first place and what it means to them. Usually you find when you do that, there's something very deep set in people's histories and in the psychological makeup, and that's the starting point for me, and I hope the starting point for all of our engagements with companies now and in the future. Okay, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I hope that was okay.